Welcome to the latest episode of the NLA, National Leaderology Association podcast in celebration of Super Bowl Sunday. You guys can't see us, but it's being video as well, so we'll show the video later on. We are celebrating Super Bowl Sunday. Today's topic is something that Tanner and I discussed because it's Super Bowl Sunday. We wanted to take one of the visionary leaders in the game of football, Mr. Bill Walsh, and he has some 6 guidelines for establishing your standards of performance. And we're going to go through them. We're going to go through hopefully all 6. I'm not sure if we'll be able to get through all 6 because we usually go down rabbit holes, but we'll see where we go. I am your host, Dr. Amin Sanaia, leaderologist, thought leader, and author. And as usual, I have the privilege to be joined by my tag team partner, Tanner Thorp.
How's it going? I'm Tanner, human being, content creator, culture warrior, thought leader. And as always, super happy to be here. So as you said, our listeners can't see what we're wearing, but you're repping the 49ers pretty strong right now.
Absolutely.
I am repping my favorite team in the whole world, the Florida Gators. I wish there were more Gators on the 49ers today, but there's 5 of them on the Kansas City Chiefs right now. So it's going to be an interesting day. It's going to be an interesting game. So I'm super excited for it.
Sure. Well, let's introduce this topic. So this episode delves deep into the art and science of leadership through the lens of one of the most influential figures in the realm of team management and performance excellence. That is Bill Walsh. He was a visionary leader and the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers. Through the exploration of his standards of performance, we uncover a universal framework for achieving excellence, highlighting the critical importance of alignment, communication, ownership, vision and values, connection, and accountability. In this episode, we're going to start with the foundation of high performance. And when we bring up this topic of foundation of high performance, it touches upon, for me, something in the sort of alignment. How do we get everyone together going the same directions? And that's very important if you want to have a high performance team and also to achieve excellence, as Bill Walsh did. Let me tune up our first question so we can go from there. How does clear alignment within an organization lead to improved outcomes? And what challenges do leaders face in achieving this alignment?
So there's a lot to that question.
Yes.
I mean, first, it's about understanding what the vision of the company is, and so I'm going to take a step back real quick, because as you were talking about high performing, the most important part of a high performing team is that everybody has to know their role. They have to know their place on the team, right? There can only be one quarterback. Well, I mean, unless we're talking about trick plays, but really, yeah. I mean, there's one quarterback.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I had a leader that I was talking with, I think it was this past week, and they're big soccer people. And they were talking about how when you're playing on a professional soccer team, you know who your top 3 scorers are, right?
Yes.
The other 9 players or 8 players. 8 players. The other 8 players, their roles are to support those top 3 players.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean that their roles are diminished in any way, but their roles are support roles. So, when we're talking about alignment, I think the very first thing is not only does the company to know what its identity is and where it's trying to get to, the course the boat is rowing, if you will, but also the players on the team need to know their roles in how they row that boat and they support that boat. I just recently went and watched the movie The Boys in the Boat, which was about the University of Washington rowing team. And I had no idea. I'm from the Seattle area, and I had no idea about this story. And it's about these boys who are on the JV rowing team for the University of Washington. They end up going like all the way to the Olympics and winning Olympic gold. And you would think that, on a rowing team, all of the rowers have the same responsibilities, right? Like they're all rowing oars. You would think that, their responsibility is to just put the paddle in the water and pull it backwards. But there's depth to those individual rowers. You have your power rowers, you have your alignment rowers. But I would say that the most important person on that boat is the one who has the megaphone and sits at the front of the boat, and he's directing the cadence. He's telling them when they're supposed to speed up. He's telling them when they're supposed to slow down. He's telling them when they're supposed to exert more power. He's telling them when they're rowing out of line with everyone else and they're affecting the way the oars are going through the water. The depth of such a simple, what would be perceived in my naive mind, what I perceived as a simple act of just moving oars through water, had so much more involved in it. And having that alignment where each rower had the other rower's back. Each rower was listening to the instructions as they were being called out. Each rower knew their place on the boat. I think when we talk about alignment as in a company and with leadership, first, obviously the leader has to be aligned with what the mission, vision, values are. We're going to talk about that in later questions, but they have to know what the true course is that they're trying to get down.
Absolutely.
Then they have to be able to direct who are going to be their leaders, their coaches, essentially, that are going to get the other rowers to row the way that they're supposed to. So, and we're using a lot of analogies here right now. But I think they all speak to the same thing, right? You said, how do we all row in the same direction? How do we all get the team rowing in the same direction? So you got to know your people. You got to know the course that you're plotting. You got to know who your strong players are. You got to make sure that everybody knows where their seat on the boat is. Yep. And so you have to identify what the seats on the boat are.
Yep.
What are their key metrics and how they contribute to the overall boat getting down the course, and then who sits in those seats.
That's very important.
Yeah. And then, as leaders, how do we determine who the right players are in those seats? That goes back to knowing your people, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. Knowing your people is knowing your business. And you have to, if you don't know your people, then you can't put them in the right positions for them to be successful or for the organization to be successful.
Agreed. And you have to have courage. So you have to have integrity and you have to have courage. Nobody's going to follow you if you don't have integrity.
That's correct.
If you don't do what you say you're going to do, including holding people accountable and having tough conversations, nobody's going to follow you. And then you have to have courage, which builds respect of your authority, to be able to say, hey, this person might not be in the right seat, or this person may not even be the right person to be on the boat. And I mean, those are impactful things. Sometimes you don't want to make the change too soon because you want to give somebody the opportunity. Sometimes you hold on too long because you see potential in someone that they don't see in themselves.
Yes.
So, you know, there's as far as fostering that alignment, there's so much more depth to that than just choosing the right person or making sure that it's the right person in the bus. You as the leader have to be integral to that alignment, and you have to have the courage to make the tough decisions when they're necessary. And you know, I think Bill Walsh would speak to that to no end about making the tough decisions to move progress forward.
Oh, without a doubt, he wasn't afraid to make those decisions and move the people around and put them where they are best to be successful. So
Yeah.
the second half of the question that I posed at the beginning that asked about the challenges, what challenges do leaders face in achieving this alignment? Um, I I want to start with cultural misalignment, and I think that's very pertinent to your conversation there towards the end. Is it's it's when we have people that don't belong in the boat, it's because I mean, their values are not aligned with the values of the organization. And then you have this cultural misalignment. And that's when, as a leader, have the courage to have that conversation where this is not a situation that's going to be sustainable.
Yeah, you know, you and I have been in leadership for a long time. And we've been in organizations together, and we've been in organizations separate from one another. And just because someone isn't the right fit for your company doesn't mean that they're not a good team member or the right fit for another company. Right? We
Absolutely.
all bring different personalities
Mhm.
into our roles. And um you know, there's been many times that I've hired someone that was an incredible candidate, but once you got them in, they didn't fit with the culture, for whatever reason.
Yes.
You know, as a matter of fact, I'm dealing with one of a with a situation right now with a leader. They are an incredibly talented leader. They've got good vision. They've got great skills. They're tactical. But for whatever reason, they are struggling with interpersonal communication with the team. And there's been some coaching that's been going on, but their approach is just off.
Mhm.
And while they are not asking the wrong things of team members, what they're asking is absolutely correct. Sometimes how you say what you say is more important than what you say. And as we're working on a big project right now with this leader and the team members that are involved, they need the team members to support them. They need the team members to be on board with what this vision is and where we're trying to get to. And they cannot relate to him. I mean, this leader is really struggling with being able to find the way in. And there's already and this, and I've seen this happen so many times in organizations. Uh, Somebody will come in with clear goals and clear expectations of what they've been directed to do,
Yes.
and how they come in and how they deliver that message doesn't land right with the team that they're trying to lead. And then that team then resists everything for a while from that leader, which then makes getting that goal accomplished, getting that mission accomplished so much more difficult and take so much more time. Whereas if the leader had a little bit more self-awareness, or emotional intelligence, or listened to different advice that was given to them, took the time to get to know their people, they could take a step back and say, okay, maybe I'm coming off the wrong way. How do we all get on the same page and start moving forward?
Absolutely. I mean, that goes to one of the other points that I was going to make is resistant to change. And that's exactly what it sounds like in this situation. And some of the tips that for leaders that they can use in those situations is get a small win. Get a small win. Get one or two
So
people
important.
on your side that can deliver the message for you, because it's not always about you sending the message. You can also, work through people as a leader and send messages that way to get more buy-in.
We talked about it not on the last podcast that we did, but the one before it, about the importance of the quiet person in the room.
Yes.
Right? So I have a really big personality. When I walk in, I'm trying to meet everyone. I'm shaking hands. I'm trying to become friends. But I'm also really observant of who are my key stakeholders. And I'm not talking about the ones that are the hardest workers. I'm not talking about the ones that have the most drive. I'm not talking about the ones that have the big ideas. Who are my influencers?
Yes.
Who are my ones that, if they believe in what I'm trying to do, they're going to influence the rest of the team
Absolutely.
to give me a chance.
Absolutely.
And so often as a leader, it's more important to come in and observe for it doesn't take long, a couple of days, a week, get around the cooler, get around the coffee machine, get your leaders together, start asking questions of, who is it that influences others on this team, right? Once you know those things, once you've identified those players in the game, then you can really start to shuffle pieces and move around. You can find out who your detractors are.
Absolutely.
Who are the ones who are obviously drilling holes in the boat, and either figure out why they're drilling holes in the boat and get some corrective actions in place of how you can get them to where they need to be, or you can move on from them, so that you're not flooding your boat. The observation piece can't be understated.
Oh, without a doubt, it's so vital as a leader, especially when you walk into a new situation, a new team, a new organization. You want to listen more than what you speak,
Absolutely.
because you will learn a lot. People will tell you a lot without you even asking.
People will always tell you who they are. People will always show you who they are.
Yeah.
We heard a great quote this week. It said, "I don't believe words. I rarely believe actions, but I always believe patterns."
Yes.
And I tell you what, when I heard that, Amin, that hit me like a ton of bricks. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Matter of fact, it changed. I told the person that shared it with us, that it changed how I pray in the morning. That because I always pray that God will use me as a vessel and work through me, and may your will be done to me and through me and around me. But now I've started praying along with all of those things that I be a man of good patterns.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's true. Your patterns will show who you are.
That is so true. So that gets me to thinking in relationships. So, and our relationships with either your loved ones or your partner, you can when you meet people, you can pretty much try to hide certain things of your personality, your quirks, for only a short period of time,
Mhm.
weeks, maybe a few months. Man, you can't do that for a very long time because you are who you are. So it's going to
Patterns will always
show.
show. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I read something years ago by a therapist who said, the red flags that you ignore in the beginning will be the things that cause the end of the relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know we've spoken about that before.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like people will be themselves, and as they should,
Hmm.
and if
Yes.
you pay attention to their patterns, you will know who they are. you know I think more often than not we tend to ignore our own patterns. We look at
That's
our patterns and we look at the things that we want to change about ourselves, but then we just don't do it. I mean, and you and I speak to this all the time, but how often have you gotten yourself into a mindset of, I'm going to work out, I'm going to lose weight, this is going to be the year that I'm going to do these things, and then you go for it, and you go for it hard, and then a couple of months later you have that Twinkie,
hmm
right? And you
hmm
skip
yes.
gym day, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, you know what, like, I skipped yesterday, I, I don't need to go today. I already had that Twinkie. I'll get back on track, down the road. That's an easy one to identify, right? But we all have patterns and things that about ourselves that we just don't want to address because we don't want to give it up, or we don't want to admit that we're like that truly to ourselves. And it's no different in leadership,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
We know the things that we could do better at in leadership, better at and being a team member, better at and being an employee, better at and being a coworker. The things that we struggle to really work on. I shared with you before we started this podcast that growth setting is more important than goal setting.
Absolutely.
And as we're talking about it, I told you it's been sticking with me for like 24 hours now. Like, it's been sticking with me. As we're talking about this pattern management, all I'm thinking about is growth setting is more important than goal setting. Right? If I want to be the best leader that I can be, leading the best teams that I can be in the most alignment that I can have them in, I have to set growth for myself, because the goals will naturally come along with
I agree wholeheartedly. So I'm going to be thinking a lot about that. I'm thinking about it right now.
it. I told you it's going to
Yep.
stick with you.
Yep, absolutely. So a couple of more things there on as far as the challenges, so we can wrap up that question. Uh, Motivational variances. Yeah, as a leader, that's a big one. Um, how do you motivate your teams? And not everyone is motivated by the same thing.
I
Um,
was just going to say the same. I was just going to say that. I mean, not everybody is motivated by the same thing. Some people some people work better in a group.
yep.
Some people work better alone on tasks. Some
Hmm.
people are motivated by rewards. Some people are motivated by just a kind word or a thank you note. Some people like public praise. Some people get embarrassed by that and it shuts them down. So motivational variances and motivational metrics go back to knowing your people.
Without a
you
doubt.
know yeah, you have to know what inspires them and gets them going. And how do you pour into them? How are you helping them grow? you know
I,
i
I
i
like what you said about how do you pour into them?
Mhm.
And that's a concept that I've had most of my life is how do I fill your cup? Because if I can fill your cup, then I know I'm serving you correctly.
Yeah. How do you make your birds sing and give them flight? You know, I just did this wall back here yesterday, and one of the things that I wanted to put on there, I didn't have room, and I couldn't find one that fit with what I really wanted to put on there, was a bird cage with an open door. Because it's been a philosophy of mine for a long time that I don't ever want to cage my birds.
Yeah.
Right. I want to pour into my team so much that they can fly as free and as far as they want to, because that's the true reward, right? Like, that's, in being a leader, that's the real gift, is how are you pouring into your team? How are you growing them so that they can grow as far as they want to go? You know, and taking in that the time you get with really good leaders, the time you get growing really good leaders, is a blessing.
Oh, there's not enough money in the world that can make you feel how you feel when you help someone grow. That's
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, the success of others that I've been with, you know, when I see them succeed, that's more important than my success, hands down.
oh, it speaks to your ministry, your work.
Yeah, hands down.
That's very, very commendable. The last one is communication barriers, and I know we've touched upon all of that from the beginning of the conversation. It's, I mean, having that as a leader, you have to be a great communicator.
So there's always going to be communication barriers, and communication barriers can take many different forms, and we've talked about this in past podcasts. You know, it can be what your cultural upbringing was. It can be your level of education.
Yes.
It can be your acumen. One of my favorite stories is, so in my career as a chef, I've always had this philosophy that we all speak the same language, right? You've heard me say it a million times, that food is the universal language, but in kitchens, we all speak the same language, right? We speak
Yes.
fire and sharp and texture, and it's a very tactile language.
Yes.
And so I was interviewing cooks, and I had a young lady who worked for me, and she said her husband really wanted to apply. I said, great, send him in. She said, well, he doesn't speak any English. I said, that's okay. We all speak the same language. All right. So she brings him in, and his name was Juan Carlos Belmontes, one of my favorite cooks I've ever worked with. Juan Carlos didn't speak any English at all. So I had another cook who spoke Spanish, and I brought him in and interviewed him. And you could tell Juan was so nervous because he didn't speak English. And he said, how am I going to survive in this job? And through the translator, I said, well, do you know how to cook burgers? Tell me, do you know how to flip eggs? Do you know how to, do the basics? Can you use a knife? Yeah. Oh, yes. See, I can do all of this. Juan, while working with me, became not only one of my best cooks that I've ever had in my life, but he was also able to learn pretty good English, and became one of my top lead line cooks in the time that I had with him. So, communication barriers are only barriers if we let them be.
Absolutely. If we don't address them, if we don't, if we don't take the time to figure that out, how, because different people want to be communicated in different ways.
Yeah.
You have people that they just need to see the goal and they can get there. There are some people that need details, so you have to, give them the details. Uh, so you're going to be wrestling with information overload or not, as you said, language differences or not. if you are in remote places, I mean, you have that as well. That can be a
Yeah.
communication barrier, because not everyone knows how to communicate effectively if they're not in the same space.
I think the most important part when we talk about communication barriers is to recognize that there's always a tool.
Yes.
There's always a workaround,
Mm-hmm.
and again, it goes back to knowing your people, knowing how they need to be communicated with. I mean, I work with a group that they're a younger demographic, right? When I came up in kitchens, the chef would scream and yell at you like Gordon Ramsay does on TV, which doesn't happen anymore. They'd throw things. I mean, it was a toxic work environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can't communicate with anyone like that anymore. I mean,
No.
you yell at someone today, you're not going to have a job and you're not going to have any workers, and so, I don't want to say that the younger generation is more sensitive, because that's not a fair way to put it. They are less tolerant of toxic behaviors.
Exactly.
But if you don't know that and you don't know how to communicate with them, you're going to find yourself in difficult positions. If you don't know which one of your team members need more detail, which one of your team members are, more broad thinking, you know, it's the only way that you're going to get your teams in alignment is understanding who they are, how they work, what they bring to the table, how they want to be communicated with. There's so many layers to it, but it's a navigatable scenario in any leadership situation. It's as long as you know these things, and you're conscious of them, you can navigate any of these courses.
Yeah, it's having the leadership maturity to be able to do that, and recognize that. Since we're speaking in communication, the second part of Bill Walsh's 6-part series is the art of expectation. And
Ooh.
yeah, oh yeah, and that goes hand in hand with the communication piece. So in this discussion, let's do. I want to do something a little bit different. So, the role of clear communication in setting expectations for high effort and execution. I'm gonna give you some keywords, and then we can uh, go down those rabbit holes with these keywords.
All right.
All right. So clarity and precision.
Mm-hmm. So clarity speaks for itself.
Yes.
All right. So, clarity, it's all about making sure that you're incredibly clear
Mm-hmm.
on what you're talking about with the goal. Precision, though, is a bit different, because while you can be clear with the expectation, being precise in how you reach those expectations is incredibly important. I can tell you, hey, there's a mountain over there, and as you get up to the mountain, you'll see a pathway. Right? That's pretty clear. That's clarity, right? I expect you to get to the top of that mountain.
Mm-hmm.
There's a path. Go find the path. Right?
Yes.
Precision is saying, okay, so there's a mountain over there, and I want you to get to the top of it, and I want you to get to the top of it by this time. And there's a path that as you get over there, that path's going to take you to the top. But if you're going up that path, at some point you're going to get to a fork in that path, and that fork, the right hand way is the scenic route, and it's going to take you around the mountain in kind of the spiral way. It's going to be a little bit more leisurely, but it's going to take you about double the time. If you go to the left is going to take you up a little bit more challenging route, but you're going to get there by the time that I expect you to get up there. And I've mapped all of this out because I've done it myself, and I can see that with your skill set and ability that you should be able to get there in this amount of time or better.
So I'm glad that you went through that whole exercise. Because there's a few things I want to say about that.
Yeah.
So, and you're correct, clarity and precision. Clarity is clarity, and precision is what you just described eloquently on that example. I know from my personal experiences, and everyone's a little bit different, but I am more than fine with clarity. I will struggle with precision. So as leaders, depending again, this depends on the workplace, the organization, and what you're trying to achieve. Knowing your people, you have to know when to use the clarity and when to use the precision.
Yeah. So when you say you struggle with precision, do you struggle with precision personally, or do you struggle with precision with your leaders that you're leading?
I would say personally first, a little bit of both, but personally first because me being I'm a maverick, so trailblazer. I don't need you to tell me that you're going to go to the front door, but I need you to get to the front door in 5 seconds and only take 6 steps and don't look the other way. That's being very precise.
Yeah.
I will struggle with that. I absolutely. Just because of my nature of who I am.
Yep.
So if I know that I will struggle in that sense, I am very conscientious of that when I'm leading people and making sure that I give them enough clarity. But if they do need precision, that's not a problem. I will give them precision, but it's not my choice.
Yeah. Yeah. As I sit here and reflect, I believe that I've always struggled with exactly what you're talking about, because typically I'm high functioning, I'm a maverick also, and I expect people to be self-starters, maybe not self-starters, but self-motivators along the way.
Yes.
If I have to explain it to you in such granular detail, how did you get to where you're at? Is usually like the thought that goes through my mind, and that's not fair to people because everybody learns a different way. But if I've hired you into a leadership role, my expectation is that you see big picture also.
Yes.
So you and I may not take the same route there, but we're going to end up at the same result. And what I've learned, obviously over time, is that level of acumen does not necessarily equate to level of precision. That oftentimes, if I expect things to be done the way I expect them to be done, I typically have to be very precise in my explanation of how I want them done. And oftentimes, when I get really frustrated, it's because I didn't set the expectation clear enough. I set what I wanted the outcome to be.
Yep.
I didn't set what I expected the steps to get there to be. And I mean, my guiding principles. My guiding principle number 2 is unexpressed needs rarely get met.
Without a doubt.
It doesn't mean that they won't get met, but if I'm not clearly expressing what I expect to happen, I can't expect anyone to meet my needs. But no one's a mind reader, right? And in leadership, it's no different. There's the reason why you have steps to get to places. It's why you do things like plan, do, check, act, right?
Or SMART.
Or SMART goals. Exactly. I was thinking about SMART goals this morning as I was thinking about growth setting versus goal setting.
We're gonna have to do an episode on this growth setting, huh? Because I'm thinking through that. I'm thinking through that. But yes, I absolutely. So I I purposely wanted to start with the clarity and precision just so that we can have that open dialogue. Next one, empowerment through autonomy.
So that's a tricky one. We want to be able to empower our teams and the individual team members to be able to get to where we expect them to go. We want them to be autonomous in that we want them to be able to make smart decisions.
Yes.
That help get them there. But like we just talked about, we as leaders, again, knowing your people is knowing your business. We as leaders have to know our people. Yes. And some people cannot work autonomously.
Without a doubt.
Some people, they need that group to bounce ideas off. So I just watched Oppenheimer last night. Have you seen Oppenheimer?
Of course, man. I was waiting for you to watch it.
so it's I just watched it. And as you watch that movie, the only way Oppenheimer was able to do anything was with a group. He could not work autonomously. He had great ideas. He was brilliantly minded. Matter of fact, I was watching it and I was thinking to myself, what it must be like to have that brain where you could where someone hands you a complex math equation and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wow, because I can't do that. They see it in a different way.
Yes.
I'm getting off point here though, but somebody as brilliant as Oppenheimer, you can empower him all you want, but he was never going to be able to be autonomous. So you have to know who your people are, the ones that are very driven and can work independently and can be autonomous. You give different projects to them.
Yes.
Than you do the ones that have to be in a group. They need that think tank type of environment, and they're going to give you different measured results than the autonomous team member who's going to give you incredible results because they can tune everyone else out and they can really get their brain power going and do that. But two completely different types of empowerment.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, there's, as you mentioned, some team members where they get to play in a smaller box and they get to play with others all the time because they just don't have the capability of producing at a higher level without having that motivation of being with the team. And then you have those team members there, and you're able to grant them that autonomy, and they just thrive just because of the intrinsic motivation piece and personal accountability. They're able to do that. Not everyone can do that. All right, next one, modeling behavior.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the most important attributes of a good leader is modeling behavior. One of the most difficult things to do at times is to model good behavior.
Yes.
A saying of mine for a little while now has, and it's just an internal saying that I say to myself, is, Tanner, you must live above reproach. And I fail at it every single day, right? I'm surprised I'm able to do it as well as we do on these podcasts, but I have a mouth like a sailor. I drop all kinds of dirty words all day long. What this podcast shows me is that I have the ability to not do it, but yes. it's part of my personality, and it's something that I recognize that it's a weakness of mine. I don't always model good behavior when it comes to my language. But I do always have in the back of my brain, Tanner, you should be living above reproach. And so, you know, I think it's not, I know it's incredibly important for leaders to model good behavior. I think it's also incredibly important to give yourself grace, and know that everybody falls short.
Yes.
Now, if we're talking about things that are, I mean, that we know are just unacceptable, right? Harassment, toxicity,
Yes.
things like that. Look, kick rocks.
Yeah.
You should go get yourself some help.
Yep.
Right. And give yourself a break from being around people for a little while, because that's unacceptable. But modeling behaviors, gosh, it's so important. It's so hard to do at times.
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure. One of the things that I do, and that I'm just going to think out loud right now. So one of the things that I struggle at times with is urgency. And I'm the type of person, if something needs to get done, it's done yesterday, not in a few weeks. And trying to model that, it's been challenging. It's been challenging because not everyone is built the same way. Not everyone is has the same upbringing of, just want to get things done.
Right.
So that's been a hard for me at times, trying to model that and have that as something that my leaders can have as a second nature. So that's been tough for me, and I'm still trying to figure out how do I display in a better manner, I guess, or have.
Well,
What are
I don't know if that's a fair statement, though, because you model urgency in that you are task oriented and you get your tasks done in a efficient and timely manner. Just because your team doesn't mean that you're not modeling the behavior correctly to them. It means that they're not adopting the behavior that you're trying to show them and teach them. And I struggle with the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I struggle with the same thing with my leaders, and I don't know whether it's setting tighter timelines. I don't know if it's setting, you may know when a goal end date is. Maybe you set it a week before to make sure that they meet the time frame that you're looking for. And this is just me spitballing and trying to come up with ideas. But I'm sure there's a way to reinforce good behavior without feeling like you're not modeling it correctly, because I believe that you are.
That's a fair point there. That's a fair point. The second piece to that is the modeling ownership. And I love that word, ownership, versus versus accountability. I know we've had a discussion about that.
Right. We've been working on this one quite a bit lately. So I'll share another story. So years ago, I used to own a restaurant, and I worked. It's the hardest I've ever worked for the least amount of money I've ever made in my life. And the reason that I worked it so hard was because when you own something, nobody cares about it like you do.
Absolutely.
So in my restaurant, I would always struggle with, how come my team isn't as invested in this as I am? right? They all say they love to cook. They all say they love to be good servers. They all say they want to be the best. They all yada, yada, yada. But their behavior doesn't match their words. And the only thing that I could come up with is because they don't own it, right? They're not invested in it the same way that I'm invested in it.
Absolutely.
And so from there, as I've continued throughout my career, I've always kept that in mind, that nobody owns it like the owner. So how do you inspire them to have that ownership mindset? How do you, and you can't make them feel that same sense of ownership because they don't own it. All right. So how do you inspire them to action? How do you get them to believe that what they're doing makes a difference? And so for me, it's all about purpose.
Yes.
So in order to have ownership, in order to have your teams have true ownership, they have to believe that what they do has a purpose and that purpose makes a difference. Once you line those things up, then they own it.
I agree, and also showing them as you're doing it, the small wins. Hey, look at this. We accomplished this. How did that make you feel? Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do another short goal, where they're seeing it pile on.
Well,
And
you and I were just talking about this earlier this week with a group that we were leading and doing a workshop with, and one of the young ladies that was in there worked for a big organization previously, and she used an example of accomplishing a very large goal that took a lot of time to get there. And at the end, the company pointed out all of the things that went wrong trying to get there. That yes, you accomplished this, but here's all the things that you didn't do right getting here. And she said the difference it would have made if they would have just celebrated the small wins along the way.
Absolutely. Yep. It's so to your point earlier in our conversation, it's the way you deliver a message. I mean, there's different ways to look at an end result. You can either do it that way, that the young lady told us about, and deflate everyone, or you can point out small wins along the way and get people motivated and get their buy-in.
Yep.
All right, so we're just a little bit under an hour.
We knew it. We
yeah,
knew it.
We got through two of them.
Called it.
Yep. But the great thing is that there's one of the segments. I don't know if you read it. That's coming up. It's called Guiding Principles.
Oof! Can't wait.
Yep.
You know, I got a couple of those.
Absolutely, absolutely. That should be a fun one. All right. Well, we're gonna check out here. Everyone have incredible Super Bowl Sunday. Go Niners.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a blessed day.